Hi, I'm Adam Meyer of Mill City Lutheran in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and in this video I'm going to be doing an updated video. I made a video on doing a Floyd Rose install a few years ago. Better camera, better editing. This isn't going to be exactly the same thing. We're going to be doing it into a Fender Stratocaster. It's a Mexican one. We'll also be using the Gotoh Tremolo. It uses the exact same routing as a Floyd Rose. They're directly compatible, so if you're, regardless of which tremolo you're using, the same templates, the same method, it's all basically the same deal. So we've got this guitar, which is apparently sentimental. Father and son have done some work with the electronics and things. Each time I do one of these, I have to start off at square one with just drawing everything out, centering up with the neck, and measuring scale out. And that takes a bunch of time. I can sit there with the router and route the body in 10 minutes, but it takes me an hour to draw everything out. That's kind of where a lot of the labor is involved on this. So going through the process here, you'll get an idea of what's involved, and let's get this all taken apart. All right, as I said before, we're doing all the same work as if I was putting an actual Floyd Rose brand tremolo in. We're going to be using the Gotoh GE1996T. This is a more affordable tremolo. Still has a nice brass block, all the blocks inside and all the bolts and everything, the plate, everything, the plating, it's all really good on this. There are definitely some pieces about the Floyd Rose that are a little nicer. I wouldn't go, if you're spending all this money on the labor on this, I wouldn't go anything lower end than this. Floyd Rose makes some tremolos like the Floyd Rose Special, which are cheaper than this. They have really cheap components, like a cheap trem block. The plating isn't as nice. Definitely, you're really cutting some corners if you go with that. So my recommendation, you're having this modification done, at least use the Gotoh or an actual real Floyd Rose, the Floyd Rose Original or Floyd Rose Pro. We'll also be using the Floyd Rose brand locking nut. Once again, there's definitely a difference in the quality of the materials. If you find something online that's like $20, that's going to be a pretty cheap locking nut. You'll notice that the strings will wear into the plating and the sizing may not be very good. So here's a look at the guitar to start. Just a regular Stratocaster, humbucker in the bridge, 6-point tremolo. Now with this one, I'll be doing a special step here. We need to recess the bridge, and I will actually be doing the routing with the pickguard on. That way I can get a nice cut into the plastic. We'll end up having to move these screw holes, or this one might end up right on the edge. I'm going to have to check out later in the video here. But that way I get a nice clean edge. Everything is perfectly fit together. But in order to do that, I got to remove all the electronics off the pickguard and then put the pickguard back on. Now we have the bridge removed. We want to fill the screw holes, the mounting screws that were keeping the bridge in place, or if you have the modern with the 2 posts, fill those in with a larger dowel, just some glue, cut it off. This time around doesn't need to be fancy because we're going to be routing over and all this will be taken down. But we definitely want to reinforce this wood here, not leave those holes. Even though the posts are going to be back here, we still want to have the wood as solid as possible. Alright, so each time I do this, I want to take a straight edge of some sort, mark out my lines here and here. It's spaced off the neck. Instead of trying to find a center line on the body, you might have a seam. That isn't always perfectly center. So that's why I'm doing it off here, because we know that I am measuring everything out to line up with the neck. Now we've got that, we've got our center line established. Now we've got to talk about scale length. Fender Stratocasters most commonly are 25.5 inches. That is from the front edge of the nut to the E-string saddle. or front edge of the nut to the 12th fret is the same distance from the 12th fret to the saddle. I have this scale ruler here. I can just line this up with the frets. So you got 12 there, then 0, and you got 12 there to mark scale length. So here we have the primary template for fitting the bridge in. As you can see, all lines up nicely like that. We've got our 2 holes here for where the posts go. We line this up. Well, what we need to do, these 2 post holes, they are to be 25 inches from the nut. So you can either subtract a ½ inch from the scale length, move that line this way. So we've got here on the pick guard. Or if you measure out, make sure you use something reliable, no foldable measuring sticks or anything. They just aren't accurate enough to get that 25 and a half. The most reliable because you're gauging off the frets, is to do nut to the 12th fret, then 12th fret to the saddle. That will always get you on the correct scale length. If you use tape measure, that's fine. A lot of people will try and argue this, but they aren't always cut really well at the end. You can find people with pictures and stuff where it just doesn't line up. Just make sure that it's consistent. I will start at the 2 line and go to 27. Subtract 2 from 27, you got 25, so it'll measure out right. But you want to make sure that you have this all accurate up here. This, framing a house, marking out fence posts in the backyard, that's fine. But on a guitar, it's typically if you're off like a 1/16 of an inch, that can be a real big problem. So with this installation on this particular guitar, we do have a problem. So right along here, right at the edge of the pick guard, that's where these posts are going to need to go. Let's take this pick guard off. These posts are going to end up really close, not much wood here in front of the post. So what I'm going to do, I'll take a template with a nice clean edge on it, just whichever one of these is real nice. I'm going to tack this on real close and just shave off the finish and make a nice flat surface on this wall. Then I'm going to glue on a piece of wood here, and I'll try and fit it so it fits in just underneath where the humbucker route here is. And hopefully we can give ourselves maybe like another 1/4 of an inch, 3/16, something like that of wood to help hold these posts in place. This just does not look like that's going to be safe. There just isn't enough right in front of there. That could end up cracking, and we'd have a problem not long after all this work is done. So that's there you go. Nice clean route here. I took off, maybe 1/16 of an inch. It is just to get the finish off because it was so lumpy. I didn't want to have to sit here by hand, sand it. But got a nice flat wall. Got out a piece of ash here, and it's going to fit in nice. And it's already the thickness where when we put the pick guard on, it is just back behind this ledge here. So we've got the pickup will probably just barely touch that, but there's a little bit of an overhang of the pick guard already. So this should be like right where it needs to be. So I'll get this glued in place, and we'll come back to it tomorrow. I'll skip ahead a little bit here. The new block is glued in. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to drill pilot holes for the pivot posts and route this ledge here. The Floyd Rose style tremolo, the whole thing is shifted forward a little bit. You end up with a big gap behind it. It's just, we're converting, we're not doing an original installation. This is a conversion modification. So that needs to be taken out so that the tremolo can swing. And like I said, pilot holes here because we're going to do a recessed route. I'm just going to drill them down plenty far, and then later, once after I do the recessed route, then I will drill the full size and depth of these. It's just a little easier to make it as accurate as possible. So I've got the first route done here. We've got our pilot holes, and what I've done is I've lined this up, traced out a line based off of giving me, you know, enough room to get the post inserts in. As you can see, I've got that line drawn out there. The reason why I'm doing that is because once, see that there where we've got our posts, once we put the pick guard on, we're covering up a lot of that. So this is where I'm going to do kind of a, say, a double route. I'm going to put some screws in here, adding a little double stick tape to help hold the pick guard down, because I'm not going to be able to put the screws in out here where they were. That's where I need the pick guard to lie, and also where the template's going to go. And now when I go to put the template on, see that I'll be able to do two at once. I'll route both the pick guard and make the recessed route for the body. I find some scraps of pick guard to use as shims out here so I can stick it on, have it all be level. Once I'm done with this, pick guard comes off, and then we'll do the back route for the string locks. All the routing is done, as you can see, and also look, good thing I glued that in ahead of time, because we are right up against that. I'll be pressing these in soon, but I'm going to go through and just make sure my edges are nice and neat. I'll be dyeing this black. We have a black tremolo. Ask the customer what they would like. Black just seems to, you know, go well. That's what I'll usually use. To try and match this finish. That's going to add a lot of time and cost to this. If I was building this from scratch, I would of course do the routing first, then spray over it, and then you don't have that issue. And you can see here, this all lines up real nice and neat. Looks almost like the way it was meant to be, or done at the factory. I'll be putting another pickguard screw over here. That's the spot where it originally was. I'll just put it in there and I'll bevel it and everything, and can't do anything over here. I'm just too close to this one. Just using that screw hole, and that'll be that. So, and one other thing, I've mentioned it in my other videos, but when you drill for these inserts, you want to be very precise how deep a hole is. That's why I just did a pilot hole to begin with, because then I wanted to measure how deep based off how deep I did this first route, and I want to be able to get these down flush to the top where the bottom of the insert is sitting on the bottom of the hole. So use like a brad point bit or something that's flat, so it presses down and it stops. That gives you the most secure fit for these. So you know, I use a black leather dye for this, since it's just going on raw wood. It gives a real nice flat black look. You know, you can use other dyes and stains, but sometimes they'll look kind of blue or a little purple. Just if you were curious about what I'm doing for this, just use a little Q-tip. Should actually be wearing gloves, but I started the camera already. So there you go. So does a real nice job. All right, time for the locking nut installation. I do have a separate video just specifically about picking out the right size locking nut for your guitar. I lean towards making sure you have the better fit over things like access to the truss rod, because you play the guitar way more than you're adjusting it, getting it to the truss rod. If you're somebody that's in there monkeying around with your truss rod all the time, you're kind of imagining that your neck's moving all over the place. Just set it and leave it, and measure it, make sure that things aren't really moving around that much. So what we need to do is we're going to pull the original nut. I need to route this down so that we have a flat shelf for the whole nut to sit on. Not just far enough to get string height, because if we do that, then approximately half of the nut will not have anything sitting underneath it. We're going to go down further than we need, then put in a couple wood spacers, glue them in place, and get this to correct height. Hopefully we'll be able to retain truss rod access. There will be a retainer bar, so that kind of gets in the way anyways as well. We're doing a modification. If we were building this from scratch, we would work around these things. So we got to get this jigged up, and we'll get this routed down and come back when we're at that point. Small detail here with that sometimes arises with the a locking nut is no matter how well these are cast or plated, you can end up with little things like you see over here, rocks a little bit. So the bottom of this nut isn't perfectly flat. I've already prepped this. I've got this really nice and flat with the new shims. So if you notice something like that, just a flat surface, and you can see I'm definitely taking more off these corners, which will help get the nut to sit more square. Still got a little bit more to do, but it's already a little better there. Time to get this nut mounted. So my method, I like to put 2 strings on. I'm sure this probably isn't my method, and probably a lot of people do this. Put 2 outer strings on, and then just make sure that I've got the nut where the strings are lined up. They're centered over the neck. That often means that the nut itself may hang off the side. Now we got to put the retainer bar on. The idea of this is, you notice your string here, as it goes through on its way to the tuner, the high E, it does not sit down at the back end of the locking nut. So when you put the block on and clamp it down, it's going to pull the string sharp. It makes tuning really difficult. This we put back here behind the nut, and it'll pull the string down and it'll hold it there. That way you can tune up, lock the nut, and then just use the fine tuners because you'll be really close. So I'm going to measure basically center between the E tuner and the back of the nut. Put them in so it's nice and parallel. Have it adjusted like that. And yeah, then follow through with the setup. The guitar is all assembled, but it is not set up yet. It's in tune. I have to do all the adjustments on it. And obviously, there is now a locking nut and a retainer bar in the way of the adjustment nut. So I'm going to show you my method of doing this quickly and easily and precisely. It involves using a relief gauge. If you do not have one of these, then you need to come up with a way to measure how much the neck flexes. Otherwise, you're just going to be eyeballing, and you probably have to go through this over and over. I do this same method as if this were, let's say, a vintage Stratocaster that had the heel end adjustment. What you do, guitar is strung up and in tune. Use your relief gauge, check out what the relief is. Let's use nice round numbers on this. We'll say it's at 10 thousandths forward relief right now. And I want to get it to, we'll say, 6 thousandths. 10 minus 6, you got to take out 4 thousandths relief from the neck. So what you do, take the strings off, or you can just slack them all the way. Check your relief measurement again. Let's say I take the strings off and it's now 5. Well, I want to take 4 thousandths away, so from 5, subtract, get down to 1. Get the nut out of the way, the retainer bar out of the way, adjust the truss rod so that this now says that it's at 1 thousandths relief. Go back through, reverse everything, string it back up, and you'll be at the adjustment that you wanted, that original desired 6 thousandths relief. It's the same thing I do if this were a vintage guitar. Check the relief, take the strings off, check again, adjust based on the math, string it back up, and you end up right where you want it to be. One of the finishing details of a good setup is we need to make sure that the saddles, that the individual string heights match the radius of the fingerboard. This fingerboard has a radius of 9.5 inches. I have these little gauges that match. You can see how it's rounded. It's very, very rare that an electric guitar would have a flat fingerboard. Some get pretty close, but they're not actually flat, but they have this curve to them. And as you can see, I can check underneath the strings at the saddle. My outer strings do not touch this gauge. So in order to raise the middle saddles, we've got these little metal shims. So I'm going to have to go through and loosen up these strings, put little shims underneath the saddles, clamp them back down in place, then double check that everything is matching. You want to make sure and do this, that way you don't end up with, you adjust your 2 pivot posts here, you have your 2 outer strings at the correct measurement, but your middle strings are buzzing because they're too low. Or conversely, your middle strings are playing nice and clean, they're where they should be, but your outer strings are just way too high. There we go, fully floating, double locking tremolo. Floyd Rose style, not Floyd Rose brand. It's nice Gotoh bridge in here, it works just fine. The work basically is the same, it's the same templates, but each job ends up being a little bit different, so I might end up having to add a little step here and there. Like for this particular guitar, I had to add that block of wood. Otherwise, we just would not have had enough support for the pivot posts here. That would have failed had I not put the block in. Planning out doing the double route with the pick guard on so we get that cut out nice. I mean, if you don't do it that way, you can cut it by hand, but I've had to do that before when somebody else is doing partial jobs, and it's just a headache. A lot quicker and easier. Comes out so much better this way. But this is this customer's favorite guitar. Not able to find all these features on something available on the market, so there just really isn't any other option than modifying what you have. That means you gotta have some little inconveniences, but otherwise everything else turns out great. So if you have any questions about this project or any of the other videos, you can always leave a comment below the video, or you can contact me directly. In the About section of my channel, you'll find my contact information. And we'll see you next time.